Susan, I want to thank you so much for sharing your time with us, and looking forward to hearing the ways in which you integrate an ethic of caring, focus on community and character development in your work. And so we love it if you start to introduce yourself to our community.
Sure, thanks. So my name's Sue Lusi. I have the privilege of leading Mass Insight Education and Research. I've been president and CEO there for over 6 years, which I still personally find hard to believe. We work to promote equity of opportunity and outcome in K-12 education, with a particular focus on those who have been systemically marginalized, so that all students can achieve both their academic and personal potential. Mm-hmm. And we do that by working with schools, districts, communities, and states. Really, we talk about it as from the classroom to the state house. And I'd love to give you just some specific examples.
That'd be great.
So we work both in Massachusetts as well as nationally. In Massachusetts, in particular, we've been the state's partner in their advanced placement STEM and English program. And that program's going on its 15th year. And the goal of that program is specifically to provide additional supports to, again, to students who've been systemically marginalized, or groups of students, so particularly Black, Brown, and low-income students, and their teachers, so that those students are more likely to be in AP and to be successful in AP, with the hope that they will qualify for college credit. In that program, we serve about 10,000 students and over 500 teachers each year. In Boston specifically, we're in 14 high schools, but we're also, excuse me, around the state. To give an example of specific equity work at the state level, so again, in Massachusetts, we've been working hard, albeit not successfully yet, to get an AP credit bill passed at the State House. And a number of representatives and senators have joined in that effort. But our observation is that even within the state institutions, there's not equal treatment of AP scores for credit. So you can go to one institution and with a 3 qualify for credit, another institution might require a 4 or a 5. And that has disparate impacts when you look at the data in terms of students who are more likely to get a 3 versus a 4 or a 5. In Massachusetts and also nationally, we also do, we call them school improvement services, but they are basically diagnostics, planning supports, and implementation supports. Over the last couple of years, our work, again, at the school, district, and state level has impacted about 9,000 schools annually. In particular, we do equity audits, which are a growing area of work for us, really looking at, as you well know, Hardin, barriers to equity occur everywhere from the real, the relationship between the teacher and the student, up through the curriculum and instruction, through, school assignment policies, funding formulas, etc. And then another example, and then I'll stop, is our Philadelphia work. We're in our 2nd year of supporting about 46 schools in the school district of Philadelphia. Those schools are predominantly what they call CSI schools, comprehensive support and improvement, which means they've been identified for low performance. So we are, our team has been working very hard to support those schools in really building the capacity to enact their plans on behalf of improving education for kids.
That's great. That's a lot of rich work. So I actually have a
Sorry.
couple questions. No, it's great. No, it's very exciting, boy. And that's what, I think the organization's always been excited because you are really there helping at the ground level drive change in schools, which is where kids get, it's where we see kids. So
Right.
the first question I have, just for clarification, is not everyone in the world, there was this whole movement around AP, and that a highly successful school had to offer AP. And so there was a lot of introduction of AP in different places. But others can make an argument that by creating these honors selective class, you're not really meeting the needs of the majority of the poor Black and brown kids in your district, for whom, like in Boston, 30% of the kids entering ninth grade have so many early warning signals. Most of them will drop out, let alone take AP. So how do you think about, and if you're doing school improvement work, which is a whole system change, how do you explain the focus on AP as an equity strategy?
So like 2 or 3 months ago, a colleague and I had lunch with Bob Balfance, who, as you know, is a researcher at Johns Hopkins University. And we were talking with him about AP and early college and all of that. And he said, what's really important for kids is that they're prepared to get decent grades in challenging courses. He said, he was agnostic about how the challenging courses were framed. But what I would say is, so what we have done is used advanced placement as the platform for challenging coursework. I think your point is well taken about often who isn't and who is not an AP. And that's exactly what we work to change. And then I think it is very important that we also do the systems work, because there is only so much, no matter how gifted the educators in a school are, there's only so much you can do, in 10th, 11th, 12th grade in AP that may be, learning losses or interrupted learning that has gone back for many, many years for a given student, for a whole variety of reasons. And so I think we need both. I think we need multiple ways for students to have high school be an on-ramp to an accelerative on-ramp to college and career. I think AP is one of them. When I was an urban superintendent, as you know, I was in Providence, Rhode Island. The thing I liked about AP was it was high quality curriculum. And so I didn't have to have, not that I didn't want to, but I didn't have to have ensured a whole 12 years of quality curriculum to start raising the rigor at the high school level. And I did have, everywhere I went, there were parents of color who would say to me, superintendent, the system focuses so much on the students who are behind that my student is not getting the challenge he or she needs and deserves. And so I think AP is a platform of value, and what we're really trying to get at is decent grades in challenging courses.
And increase access. I mean, I heard you suggest it's not an either or, not either the remedial work or advanced work. They have to work. So the example would be Adrian Min's calculus project, where identifying what's happening in the middle school area so that more historically disadvantaged.
I love that work.
To actually take advantage of AP and not just throw them in the wall. And so that speak to your system change work, that to drive equity in a school system, it's not pick your favorite project, whether it's AP or project adventure or whatever. It's really we have to think about the data across the whole district and what systemic changes need to be made.
Yes, and building on that, we talk a lot about coherence. So it is, you don't have a coherent system if all you do to, increase rigor for kids is introduce AP, right? You've got to have all the scaffolding, supports, opportunities for students from pre-K to 12. And at the same time, again, as a superintendent, I was always trying to think in a couple of ways. One, you're trying to change the system.
Yeah.
Two, the kids in high school, for example, it's their one shot at high school.
Yeah.
So trying to figure out, are there things we can do in the more immediate term to make it better than it currently is, but knowing that if we don't build that coherent system, we are not going to get the numbers of students. We want more and more students ready to avail themselves of these opportunities. They may or may not choose to do so, but it shouldn't be because they're not ready.
Right. Yeah. So really, one of the things that we're hearing more and more about is and we see this in successful school districts, there's a lot of family engagement, parental coherence, as you suggested, between the family values and the school. In urban settings, in the work you do for school improvement, what part does family engagement play?
So I'm going to go back to the equity audits as an example. And interestingly, we learned a lot during the pandemic because we used to historically, it wasn't always with equity audits. It might have been with some other type of school readiness assessment. But, we would do focus groups. And I'm sure this won't surprise you, but sometimes a school invites parents to a focus group. It's at a time of day that is not convenient for many parents. The school, depending on the student assignment mechanisms of a district, the school may not even be a convenient location for parents, and it may or may not be seen as a welcoming environment. So even prior to the pandemic, we did a lot more with, well, let's have the focus group in a community center or some other, some place in that community that was seen as a safe and welcoming space. And then language and culture have a lot to do with welcoming space as well. We have more and more staff who are bilingual in Spanish, sometimes in other languages, and then making sure, to the extent we do not have staff who speak those languages, that we get assistance from the district to do that. During the pandemic, so limited success, to put it mildly, to get parents to come or families to come to a Zoom focus group. So what we started doing was getting a list of parents or of families' contact information from the district and doing random selection and doing short phone calls. And actually, our teams tell me there was better success with the phone calls for a few reasons. One, you're just talking to that individual. So, sometimes a focus group will only one or two people talk. And other people don't. And that could be for a whole number of reasons. So we've actually found these briefer phone conversations to be more inclusive of multiple voices and really making sure that people aren't just in the room, so to speak, but are actually heard from.
Engaged and heard. That's a great example. And one of the things the one more personal, safer, comfortable, people don't feel they're competing for space. But the other thing you said, that's a random selection. So you really can answer the question that you really did make efforts to have a representative sample. Right.
And as you know, often if a principal calls families to a focus group, it's not a representative sample.
I see a lot of burnout in our colleagues across the age range. And it seems to me the work you're doing demands uh, high tolerance for ambiguity and failure. How do you manage that?
So I do think this is not an original thought, but people talk about you have to look for the joy in your work. And I think that's really important. And the joy in my work is, one, hearing about how our work has helped people in various settings, hearing from practitioners themselves, and also really by having the privilege of supporting and learning from our incredibly talented team at Mass Insight. I think what people say about having to find the joy is really important when you think about not burning out. So ways I find the joy are hearing about how our work has helped people in given sites. That can come from, sometimes people actually collect testimonials, but it also, we do qualitative and quantitative research on the impact of our own work. So it's also, just yesterday, I was sitting with the school improvement team looking at data on what people have been saying about how our work was impactful. The other way I personally find joy in this work is I have the privilege of supporting and learning from a really talented and now highly diverse team of people. And so there really is a reciprocal passion and excitement for the work. And so I think you have to focus on the progress you've made. You have to focus on continuously improving your work. And ideally, you get to do it with really great people, which is my case.
Well, so you speak to what I keep hearing as a key element in school improvement, which we don't talk a lot about, which is having a highly functional team. Not everyone that you like doesn't have to be you like, not have people who look like you or act like you.
Right.
The leader, primary responsibility of the leader is to create a team that works well together, mutually supportive, common goals, and persist in the face of challenges, and using data to improve. That is one of the important parts of school change.
Building on what you said about building a team. One thing in our theory of action, an element is called collective responsibility. And it really is about building that team and that culture where everyone is invested in playing a role in the success of students and the success of the school.
And finding ways, again, to measure that, identify, help people grow into that role, and help them move on when it's not a good fit for them.
Yes, that's a good thing to do too.
Yeah, it's not, and not put them to failure of being ineffective. It's just that this is what we're doing, and this may not work for you. And I've seen great teachers leave schools because the changing culture was not right for them, and it was good for the school and them.
Right, because they often find a school culture that is a good fit.
Yeah.
So
Sue, this is a question I love asking this question because I get some great responses. If you were going to turn to your younger self starting out, what would be the advice you would give, some our younger colleagues who are in the field and getting going? What is it you think that you've learned that you wish you had known when you were starting?
So I think the first thing is career, people talk about career paths, and careers are not always, and maybe not usually, linear paths. And so my advice to people is to be really open to opportunities and new things. So I went to college and planned to be an economics and government major. I think as I unpacked that through my life, there was really the only reason, really, I was kind of interested in it, and that's what my father had majored in. I think I had a father complex, honestly. Not in a bad way, but just, yes. So my sophomore year, I took a course called the Philosophical Analysis of Educational Concepts. And to date myself, Hardin, this was long before anyone was talking about aligned standards and assessments. But this course was taught by the Socratic method. It was seminar style. And there was a lot about the difference between using different means to get to the same ends for different students versus different means to different ends for different students. And that course changed the whole trajectory of my life, because what I did, so as I told you before we got on here, I grew up in Springfield, Vermont. I went to Springfield High School, which was also the regional, still is, I believe, the regional vocational center. And I took the course announcement from my high school, and I realized it was right there in black and white that it was different means to different ends for different kids. I reflected back, and it won't surprise you that my classmates were not diverse racially and ethnically in Vermont, but we were at the time very diverse, quite diverse socioeconomically. And socioeconomics drove a lot with regard to who was in what classes. And then as I went to college, Springfield was a machine tool town. Many of my classmates went through something called the co-op program. So by their senior year, they were working half-time in these shops. And generations before mine had a pension, full benefits, and a wage that could support a family. So they really were set for life. As I went to college, every one of those shops left the community. And I remember my mother, my late mother, who was chair of the school committee for a number of years, saying, you know, the problem is many of these kids aren't prepared for anything else. And I thought, that is just wrong. That is fundamentally wrong. That and I had vivid recollections of classmates who in the few classes that were untracked were clearly bright, engaged. I mean, I did not believe for a minute that those tracks conveyed anything about a student, my classmates' potential. And yet they had enormous impact on their opportunity. And so that's what got me into education. So I would say, I always had a plan. There were lots of deviations. Then I got into education, and I started out, and someone mentioned, you might really be in like public policy. I didn't even know what public policy was. But eventually I became a superintendent. And so the through line of my career has been trying to think about the interactions between policy and practice, all with that overlay of equity. But I never would have predicted, in high school or as I was in college, what my career would have been. So be open to opportunities and avail yourselves of possibilities. I learned a lot I kind of deliberately picked things I wanted to learn from people, particularly early in my career. So I had the good fortune of working with Ted Sizer early on. And he always talked about the blameless critique. So I watched Ted countless times around the country talk with teachers and administrators and others about, it's not your fault, it's not my fault, but the system in which we are asked to work in the American high school is broken. And I think, and there were other people that I said, okay, this person's really good at this, and I can learn about it. And then my third piece of advice, or something I learned over time, was you learn an enormous amount talking with people. And often if you ask people to do an informational interview or have a cup of coffee, you learn a lot. And it helps you meet other people as well. So I am a little bit socially shy, but you shouldn't be shy. That's my.
But before I let you go, I'd be really interested in hearing from you. You know, Ezra Klein does this great. What are the 3 books you've read? Yeah. But what are the 3 podcast experiences that you would recommend people have that you've had recently that you'd want to share?
So some of this is recent and some of it's less recent. I really love work that kind of pulls the pieces or the threads together. You know, it's not many of the issues we're trying to address in education and in our society, they don't sit in any one sector. So I love Richard Rothstein's work, such as Class in Schools, and then the color of law, that really got me to think about just the interactions between poverty, between the way our system, you know, really that segregation was by design in our country, and many of the and we have not overcome the way that, you know, our systems were fundamentally designed. So that's one. I frequently listen to the podcast, The Education Gadfly, by the Fordham Institute. They present or, you know, talk with a variety of people, variety of perspectives, and it's kind of bite-sized pieces. You know, if you're going for a drive or you're gardening or whatever, you can listen to that. They also highlight recent research. And then my third recommendation is do something that gives you joy and brain space. And it'll be different for you and different for me. But going back to your earlier questions about burnout and that sort of thing, I think speaking for myself, I function a whole lot better, both personally and professionally, if I give myself a little time to think and
time
reconnect.
Sometimes weeding the garden for me sometimes is the most satisfying.
I do that too.
And just kind of take it up. I'm done. My body's moving. I'm accomplishing something, but
you can think.
And I can think and I can relax.
Exactly.
Well, so I want to thank you so much for the work that you do for the state and kids in our environment and how important that is. And I want to thank you for sharing time with us.
And Hardin, I want to thank you. I have appreciated getting to know you as a colleague, and I hope a friend. I consider you a friend, and you've done an enormous amount for Boston, for BU, and many other places. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, you have a great day. You take care, be well, and we'll be in touch. And
All right.
Enjoy your summer.
Take care. Thanks.
Bye-bye.